Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The rain hammered against our Victorian's windows like bullets, and I should have taken that as a warning. Instead, I poured another round of whiskey and watched my wife Vivian shuffle the cards with those perfectly manicured fingers that had signed our marriage certificate 8 years ago. Back then, I thought I was the luckiest architect in Maine. Tonight, I was about to discover just how wrong a man could be. Truth or dare, Nick? Vivian's voice had that honey-sweet tone that usually meant trouble. Her auburn hair caught the lamplight, and those green eyes sparkled with something I mistook for playfulness. My younger brother Eric lounged in the leather chair across from me. His designer shirt unbuttoned one button too many, that cocky grin plastered across his face like he owned the world. At 38, he still acted like the golden boy who could charm his way out of anything. Our parents had always favored him, and apparently, so did everyone else. Sienna Marlowe, Vivian's best friend and the town's most successful realtor, perched on the edge of the sofa like a vulture waiting for roadkill. Her bleached blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her lips curved in that predatory smile she wore when closing deals. "Come on, Nick," Eric chuckled, swirling his whiskey. "Don't be such a stick in the mud. It's just a game. Just a game, right?" In my 42 years on this planet, I'd learned that nothing was ever just anything when Eric was involved. "Truth," I said, because I'd always prided myself on honesty. Another mistake to add to the growing pile. Vivian leaned forward, her silk blouse revealing just enough cleavage to remind me why I'd fallen for her in the first place. "What's the one thing about our marriage that you'd change if you could?" I studied her face, looking for the trap. There was always a trap with Vivian. She was an HR consultant, which meant she knew exactly how to manipulate people's words against them. But the whiskey had loosened my tongue, and the question seemed harmless enough. "I'd want you to trust me more," I said. "Sometimes I feel like you're always testing me, like you're waiting for me to fail." "Losi, tum vlan beef." The room went quiet except for the storm outside. Eric's grin faltered for just a second, and Sienna shifted uncomfortably. Vivian's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. "Interesting," she murmured, then turned to Eric. "Your turn, brother-in-law. Truth or dare?" Truth," Eric said, his confidence returning. "I can handle whatever you've got." Vivian smiled, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. "Have you ever wanted something that belonged to Nick?" Eric's face went red, and he took a long gulp of whiskey. That's a loaded question, Viv." "That's the point of the game," Sienna said, her voice sharp with anticipation. "Answer it." Eric looked at me, then at Vivian, then back at his glass. Yeah, I have." "What?" I asked, though part of me already knew I didn't want the answer. "Your life," Eric said quietly. "Your success, your house, your business. Everything just came so easy to you, Nick. The golden architect with the perfect wife and the perfect life. Sometimes I wondered what it would be like to have all that." The honesty hit me like a slap. I'd known Eric resented my success, but hearing him say it out loud stung more than I expected. Vivian reached over and squeezed Eric's hand, a gesture that seemed oddly intimate. "Truth or dare, Vivian?" Sienna asked, her eyes glittering with malicious glee. "Truth," Vivian said without hesitation. "I'm feeling honest tonight." Sienna's smile widened. "What's your deepest, darkest fantasy? The one you've never told anyone?" Vivian didn't even pause. She looked straight at me, her green eyes boring into mine, and said, "I fantasize about you watching me with Eric." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun barrel. My brain struggled to process what she'd just said. Eric went pale, then red, then pale again. Sienna looked like Christmas had come early. "Jesus, Viv," I managed to say. That's quite a fantasy." She shrugged, as casual as if she'd just mentioned the weather. "You asked for truth. That's mine." I forced a laugh, the sound hollow and bitter in my throat. "Well, that's certainly honest." But even as I tried to play it off as a joke, I noticed things. The way Eric wouldn't meet my eyes. The way Vivian's hand lingered on his arm when she reached for her glass. The way they both seemed to know exactly where the other was at all times, like dancers who'd rehearsed their steps. The game continued for another hour, but the mood had shifted. The questions became safer, the dares more mundane. But I kept watching, kept noticing. The shared glances, the inside jokes, the way they finished each other's sentences. By midnight, Eric and Sienna had gone to their respective rooms, Eric in the guest room down the hall, Sienna in the converted attic space she used when she stayed over. Vivian and I went through our usual bedtime routine in silence. She brushed her teeth, applied her night cream, and slipped into the silk nightgown I'd bought her for our anniversary. "That was fun," she said as she climbed into bed beside me. "We should do it more often." Yeah," I said. "Fun." She kissed my cheek, her lips cool against my skin. "Good night, darling. Good night." I lay there in the darkness, listening to her breathing even out as she fell asleep. The storm had passed, leaving behind an eerie silence that seemed to press against the windows. I should have been tired. It was past 1 in the morning, but my mind kept replaying the evening's events. Your deepest, darkest fantasy is watching me with Eric. The words echoed in my head like a broken record. I told myself it was just the whiskey talking, just a provocative answer to a provocative question. But the more I thought about it, the more the pieces started falling into place. Eric's frequent visits over the past year, always when I was working late or out of town. Vivian's sudden interest in girls' nights that somehow always included Eric. The way she'd started dressing differently when he was around. More revealing, more seductive. I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could and padded barefoot down the hallway. The guest room door was closed, but I could see light underneath it. I pressed my ear to the wood and heard voices, low, urgent whispers that made my blood run cold. "We can't keep doing this," Eric was saying. "He's getting suspicious." "No, he's not," Vivian replied. "Nick's too trusting, too naive. He'd never believe his perfect little brother would betray him." "What if he finds out?" "He won't. And even if he does, what's he going to do?" "Nick's not exactly the confrontational type. He'll just suffer in silence like he always does." Their laughter was like knives twisting in my chest. I stood there for another minute, listening to them discuss me like I was some pathetic fool, before creeping back to my bedroom. Vivian was still asleep, or pretending to be. I packed a bag in the dark, moving as quietly as possible. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, my laptop. Everything I'd need for a few days away while I figured out what to do next. The wedding photo on my dresser caught the moonlight, and I stared at it for a long moment. Vivian in her white dress, radiant and beautiful, promising to love and honor me till death do us part. Turns out my wife's fantasy was reality, and I was the only one who hadn't been invited to the party. I left through the kitchen door, the one that didn't squeak, and drove away into the night. In my rearview mirror, the house looked peaceful and innocent, like any other suburban home where normal people lived normal lives. But I wasn't normal people anymore. I was a man who'd just discovered that his entire life was a lie. I spent the weekend at a cheap motel outside town, the kind of place where the carpet was stained and the ice machine hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. It gave me time to think, to plan, and most importantly, to investigate. My architectural firm, Harrow and Associates, had been my life's work. I'd built it from nothing, starting in a cramped office above a bakery and growing it into one of Maine's most respected design firms. We employed 15 people, had clients across New England, and had won awards for our innovative residential designs. But as I sat in that dingy motel room with my laptop, I started to see cracks in the foundation I'd thought was solid. The first red flag was in my email. Vivian had always been supportive of my work, often helping with administrative tasks and client relations. She had access to my business email account, something I'd never questioned because I trusted her completely. Now, that trust felt like the punchline to a cruel joke. I started with the obvious, searching for Eric's name in my sent folder. What I found made my stomach turn. Dozens of emails sent from my account to potential clients, business partners, and vendors. Emails I'd never written, never seen, never authorized. The pattern was subtle but devastating. Promises I couldn't keep. Commitments that made me look unprofessional. Inflammatory responses to legitimate complaints. Someone had been systematically undermining my reputation, and they'd been using my own email account to do it. But the real smoking gun was buried deeper in my files. Financial documents that had been altered, contracts that bore my signature but contained terms I'd never agreed to, And most damning of all, a series of transfers from the company account to a private account I'd never opened. On paper, it looked like I'd been embezzling from my own firm. My hands shook as I scrolled through the evidence of my own destruction. Every document was perfectly crafted, every detail designed to make me look guilty. This wasn't a crime of passion or a spur-of-the-moment betrayal. This was a carefully orchestrated campaign to destroy me, and it had been going on for months. I called Terry Doyle, an ex-cop who'd left the force after a corruption scandal that wasn't his fault. He'd been working as a private investigator for the past 5 years, and more importantly, he was one of the few people I trusted completely. "Nick?" Terry's gravelly voice was thick with sleep. "Jesus, what time is it? Terry, I need your help. Can you meet me?" Something in my tone must have gotten through to him because his voice sharpened immediately. "Where are you?" I gave him the motel address, and he arrived 20 minutes later with a box of donuts and a thermos of coffee that could strip paint. Terry was built like a fire hydrant, short, thick, and nearly indestructible. His gray hair was buzzed military short, and his face looked like it had been carved from granite by someone with a grudge against smooth surfaces. "You look like hell," he said, settling into the motel's single chair. "What's going on?" I told him everything. The game of truth or dare, the overheard conversation, the doctored emails and forged documents. Terry listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each revelation. "Son of a bitch," he muttered when I finished. "Your own brother?" "My own brother," I confirmed. "The question is, what do I do about it?" Terry was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence on my laptop screen. "First thing we need to do is figure out how deep this goes. If they've been planning this for months, there's got to be more than just email hacking and document forgery." He was right, of course. Over the next 3 days, we uncovered the full scope of their betrayal. Terry had contacts throughout the state, former cops, security guards, bartenders, and hotel clerks who remembered faces and weren't shy about sharing information for the right price. The timeline was devastating in its thoroughness. Eric and Vivian had been having an affair for over a year, meeting at hotels, restaurants, and even in my own home when I was away. But the affair was just the beginning. They'd been planning to take over my business, destroy my reputation, and leave me with nothing. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. First, they'd use the forged documents to make it look like I'd been embezzling money. Then, when the scandal broke, Eric would step in as the concerned brother, offering to buy out my share of the company for pennies on the dollar to save the family name. Vivian would file for divorce, claiming emotional trauma and financial hardship, and walk away with half of everything I'd worked for. Meanwhile, Sienna would use her connections in the real estate world to spread rumors about my financial irregularities, making it impossible for me to start over in the same industry. It was a perfect crime, and it almost worked. The key word being almost. "They made one mistake," Terry said as we sat in his office, surrounded by photographs, documents, and financial records. "They got greedy." He pointed to a bank statement showing the mysterious account that had been receiving the embezzled funds. "This account? It's not in your name. It's in Eric's, and the deposits don't match the supposed embezzlement dates. Some of them are from before the thefts allegedly started." I studied the documents, feeling a cold smile spread across my face. They created the account first, then backdated the embezzlement to cover it up. Exactly. And that's not the only inconsistency. Look at this. Terry showed me a series of photographs taken by a security camera outside a hotel in Portland. The timestamps showed Eric and Vivian entering a room together on a Tuesday afternoon in March. The same Tuesday, the first D supposedly sent an inflammatory email to our biggest client from my office computer. "I have digital forensics that prove you were logged into your office computer at the exact time this photo was taken," Terry said. "Unless you can be in 2 places at once, someone else sent that email." The evidence was overwhelming, but I knew it wouldn't be enough for the police. The forgeries were too good, the digital trail too complex. Even if I could prove my innocence, the scandal would destroy my reputation and my business. No, this called for a different kind of justice. "What are you thinking?" Terry asked, studying my expression. "I'm thinking it's time to play their game," I said. "But by my rules." Terry grinned, and for the first time in days, I felt like I might actually win this thing. Monday morning, I walked into my office like nothing had happened. My employees, good people who'd worked for me for years, greeted me with the usual mix of coffee-fueled enthusiasm and Monday morning complaints. None of them knew that their jobs hung in the balance, that their boss was fighting for his professional life. Marty Kowalski, my project manager, and the closest thing I had to a best friend at work, knocked on my office door around 10. Marty was a former boxer who'd found his calling in construction management after a career-ending injury. He was built like a brick wall and had the loyalty of a golden retriever. "Boss, we need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him. "What's up, Marty?" He shifted uncomfortably, his massive hands fidgeting with his hard hat. "It's about your brother. I saw him last Tuesday at the Riverside Motel with a woman. Wasn't sure if I should mention it, but what?" "The woman looked a lot like your wife." I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was celebrating. Marty had just handed me another piece of evidence, and more importantly, he'd proven that I had at least one ally in this fight. "Are you sure it was them?" Marty nodded grimly. "Positive. I was there meeting a contractor about the Morrison project. Saw them going into room 237 together, real cozy-like. Didn't seem like a family meeting, if you know what I mean." "I know exactly what you mean. Marty, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be..."
He just gave me a massage, that's it!
A massage? With I Miss Your Body after?
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Completely honest with me. "Shoot. Have you noticed anything strange around here lately? Emails sent from my account that don't sound like me? Documents that seem off? Anything that made you think twice?" Marty's face darkened. "Now that you mention it, yeah. That email you sent to the Hendersons last month, telling them to find another architect if they didn't like our timeline? That didn't sound like you at all. You've never talked to clients like that? That's because I didn't send it." I spent the next hour bringing Marty into the loop, showing him the evidence Terry and I had compiled. His reaction was everything I'd hoped for: outrage, loyalty, and a burning desire for revenge that matched my own. "Those bastards," he growled. "What do you want me to do? For now, just keep your eyes and ears open. If Eric shows up here, I want to know about it immediately. And Marty, this stays between us until I say otherwise." "You got it, boss." That afternoon, I put the first part of my plan into motion. I called Eric's cell phone, making sure to sound defeated and confused. "Eric, it's Nick. Can you meet me for drinks tonight? I need to talk to someone." "Sure, bro. Everything okay? You sound upset." The concern in his voice was so perfectly fake that I wanted to reach through the phone and strangle him. Instead, I played my part. "It's Vivian. I think she might be having an affair." There was a pause, just long enough for Eric to compose himself. "Jesus, Nick, are you sure?" "No, that's just it. I'm not sure of anything anymore. Can you meet me at the Glass Hammer around 8? The Glass Hammer was the kind of dive bar where construction workers and truck drivers went to forget their troubles. It was dark, loud, and perfect for what I had in mind. I arrived early and positioned myself at a corner table where I could see the entire bar. Terry was already there, nursing a beer and pretending to watch the football game on the ancient television above the bar. Marty sat at the bar itself, looking like any other working man unwinding after a long day. Eric walked in at exactly 8 o'clock, dressed in his usual expensive casual wear that screamed, "I'm too good for this place." He spotted me immediately and made his way over, his face a mask of brotherly concern. "Nick, you look terrible," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "What's going on?" I'd spent hours practicing this conversation, making sure I hit just the right note of confused husband and trusting brother. "I think Vivian's cheating on me." Eric's eyes widened in perfectly feigned shock. "What? That's crazy. Vivian loves you." "Does she?" "Because lately, it feels like she's a million miles away. She's always working late, always has somewhere else to be. And the other night, during that game, when she said that thing about fantasizing about you, that was just the alcohol talking," Eric said quickly. "You know how Vivian gets when she's had a few drinks." I leaned forward, letting desperation creep into my voice. But what if it wasn't? What if she really meant it? Eric reached across the table and patted my hand in a gesture that made my skin crawl. "Nick, you're being paranoid. Vivian would never cheat on you, especially not with me. I'm your brother." The irony of that statement almost made me laugh out loud. Instead, I let my shoulders slump in defeat. "You're right. I'm probably just being crazy. It's just, work has been so stressful lately, and I feel like everything's falling apart. What's going on at work?" And there it was, the opening he'd been waiting for. I could see the anticipation in his eyes, the barely contained excitement of a predator closing in on wounded prey. Some of our clients have been complaining about my work, saying I'm unprofessional and unreliable. There are financial discrepancies that I can't explain. I'm starting to think someone might be sabotaging me. Eric's concern looked genuine, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. That's terrible, Nick. Do you have any idea who might be doing something like that? No, that's just it. It has to be someone with access to my email, my office, my files. Someone I trust. I watched Eric's face carefully, looking for any crack in his performance. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across his features. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But it was gone so quickly, I might have imagined it. Well, whoever it is, we'll figure it out, Eric said. Family sticks together, right? Right, I agreed, raising my beer in a mock toast. Family. We drank in silence for a moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in Eric's head. He was probably wondering how much I knew, how close I was to discovering the truth. Little did he know, I already had everything I needed to destroy him, but I wasn't ready to play that card yet. This was just the opening move in a much longer game, and I intended to savor every moment of their downfall. I should probably get home, I said, standing up and throwing a 20 on the table. Thanks for listening, Eric. It means a lot to know I can count on you. Always, bro, always. I walked out of the bar, leaving Eric sitting alone with his thoughts and his guilt. As I reached my car, I saw Marty approaching from the shadows. Did you get it? I asked. He held up a small digital recorder and grinned. Every word. Your brother's got quite the talent for lying through his teeth. That's not the only talent he's got, I said grimly. But it's about to be his downfall. The next morning, I found a message waiting on my office voicemail. It was from Robert Henderson, the client who'd supposedly received that inflammatory email from me. Mr. Harrow, I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday. I'm glad we were able to clear up that misunderstanding about the timeline. Your brother explained that the email was sent by mistake, and we appreciate you taking the time to apologize personally. We're looking forward to continuing our working relationship. I played the message 3 times, my anger growing with each repetition. Eric had gone to my clients behind my back, spinning some story about mistaken emails and misunderstandings. He was trying to position himself as the responsible brother, cleaning up my supposed messes. It was a smart move, I had to admit, but it was also a mistake, because now I knew exactly how he planned to take over my business, and I was going to use that knowledge to destroy him. The town fundraiser gala was Millbrook's social event of the year, a chance for the local elite to dress up, drink expensive wine, and pretend they cared about whatever charity was fashionable that season. This year's cause was the Children's Hospital, which meant everyone would be extra generous with their checkbooks and their sanctimonious speeches. I arrived alone, telling everyone who asked that Vivian was feeling under the weather. In reality, she was at home, probably planning her next move with Eric and Sienna. The 3 conspirators had been meeting regularly since my confrontation with Eric at the bar, no doubt worried that I was getting too close to the truth. If only they knew how close I really was. The gala was held at the Millbrook Country Club, a sprawling complex of manicured lawns, tennis courts, and old money pretensions. I worked the room like the successful businessman I was supposed to be, shaking hands, making small talk, and keeping my ears open for useful information. That's when I overheard Margaret Whitfield, the town's most prolific gossip, talking to her bridge club friends near the silent auction table. Did you hear about Nick Harrow's business troubles? She was saying, her voice pitched just loud enough to be heard by anyone within 20 feet. Apparently, there have been some financial irregularities. What kind of irregularities? Asked Helen Morrison, whose husband was one of my clients. Embezzlement, from what I understand. His own brother had to step in to try to save the company's reputation. My blood turned to ice. The story was already spreading, just as Eric and Vivian had planned. Soon, everyone in town would believe I was a thief and a fraud. My business would be ruined, my reputation destroyed, and Eric would swoop in as the hero who saved the family name. I was admiring the elegant simplicity of their plan when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Nick, there you are. I turned to find Sienna Marlowe behind me, resplendent in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Her smile was warm and friendly, the perfect mask for the viper underneath. Sienna, you look lovely tonight. Thank you. I was just talking to the Hendersons about their new house project. They mentioned they might be looking for a new architect. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Sienna was using her connections to poison my professional relationships, just as we'd suspected. But two could play that game. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, I said, my voice carrying just far enough to reach Margaret Whitfield's eager ears. I've been meaning to ask you about that property you sold to the Johnsons last year. The one with the foundation problems that didn't show up in the inspection? Sienna's smile faltered. I don't know what you mean. Of course you do. The house on Maple Street with the cracked foundation that's going to cost them $50,000 to repair. I heard they're considering a lawsuit against their realtor for failing to disclose known defects. It was a complete lie, but it sounded plausible enough to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of everyone listening. Sienna's face went pale, and I could see her calculating the potential damage to her reputation. That's not accurate, she stammered. Isn't it? Well, I'm sure the truth will come out eventually. It always does. I excused myself and moved toward the bar, leaving Sienna to deal with the sudden chill in the conversations around her. It was a small victory, but it felt good to land the first punch in what was shaping up to be a very public war. The evening's entertainment was a jazz quartet that played background music while people bid on auction items and made networking connections. I was nursing a scotch and planning my next move when Eric appeared at my elbow. Nick, we need to talk. His usual confidence was cracked around the edges, and I could see the strain in his eyes. The pressure was getting to him, which meant my strategy was working. Sure, Eric. What's on your mind? Not here, somewhere private. He led me through the country club's main building, to a small conference room used for board meetings and private functions. The room was empty, dimly lit by a single table lamp, and far enough from the main party that we wouldn't be overheard.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
Eric demanded as soon as the door closed behind us. I'm not sure what you mean.
Don't play dumb with me, Nick. That little performance with Sienna, the questions you've been asking around town, you're making people nervous. Good.
I said, dropping the pretense of confusion. They should be nervous, especially the ones with something to hide. Eric's face flushed red. What's that supposed to mean?
It means I know, Eric. I know about you and Vivian.
I know about the forged documents, the embezzlement scheme, the plan to destroy my business and steal everything I've worked for. For a moment, Eric looked like he might deny it. Then his shoulders sagged, and the mask finally slipped away. How long have you known?
Long enough.
The question is, what are we going to do about it? Eric straightened up, and I saw a flash of the arrogance that had defined him since childhood. What can you do about it? You don't have any proof.
Don't I?
I pulled out my phone and played a recording of our conversation at the Glass Hammer, Eric's voice clear and damning as he lied to my face about Vivian's faithfulness. Then I showed him photographs of him and Vivian entering the motel, bank records proving the embezzlement scheme, and digital forensics proving the emails had been sent from outside my office. Eric's face went white. Where did you get all this?
I have friends, Eric.
Friends who know how to find the truth when people try to hide it. You can't prove anything, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Can't I? I have enough evidence to send you to prison for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. I have enough to destroy Vivian's career and Sienna's real estate license. I have enough to ruin all three of you. Eric was quiet for a long moment, staring at the evidence of his crimes. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. What do you want? I want you to confess, all three of you. I want a full admission of what you've done, and I want you to make it right. And if we don't, I smiled, and it felt cold as winter morning. Then I'll destroy you, all of you, completely and utterly. Eric tried to bluster, to reclaim some of his lost bravado. You don't have the balls, Nick. You never did. You're too soft, too nice, too worried about what people will think. You're right, I said. The old Nick was all of those things. But the old Nick didn't know his wife was fucking his brother. The old Nick didn't know his family was trying to destroy him. The old Nick is gone, Eric, and the new Nick doesn't give a damn what people think. I left him standing in that conference room, surrounded by the evidence of his betrayal and the wreckage of his plans. As I walked back to the main party, I felt lighter than I had in months. The war had officially begun, and I'd just fired the first shot. But Eric and Vivian weren't going to surrender quietly. If anything, I just made them more dangerous. They'd be desperate now, and desperate people do desperate things. I was counting on it. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find chaos. 3 of my biggest clients had called to cancel their contracts, citing concerns about the company's financial stability and professional conduct. 2 of my best employees had submitted their resignations, effective immediately, and there was a message from my business insurance company requesting a meeting to discuss irregularities in recent claims. Eric and Vivian had declared war. I called an emergency staff meeting, gathering my remaining employees in the conference room. These were good people, architects, designers, project managers, and administrative staff who'd helped build my company from the ground up. They deserved to know what was happening, even if I couldn't tell them everything. I know there have been rumors, I began, looking each of them in the eye. Rumors about financial problems, about my professional conduct, about the future of this company. I want you to hear the truth from me. I explained that someone had been sabotaging the business, using forged documents and fake emails to damage our reputation. I told them about the investigation I'd been conducting, about the evidence I'd gathered, and about my determination to clear the company's name and my own. What I didn't tell them was that the saboteur was my own brother, or that my wife was his accomplice. I understand if some of you want to leave, I said. This is going to get worse before it gets better, and I won't hold it against anyone who decides they can't weather this storm. Marty was the first to speak up. Boss, I've worked for you for 8 years. In all that time, you've never lied to me, never cheated me, never treated me with anything but respect. If you say someone's trying to frame you, that's good enough for me. One by one, the others voiced their support. Sarah Chen, my lead designer, said she'd rather work for an honest man with a damaged reputation than a dishonest one with a clean record. Tom Bradley, our newest hire, said he'd learned more in 6 months working for me than in 2 years at his previous job.